I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of Exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the fire building in the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay.
610B. That was the day date. 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the second floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Getting up to the top floor. I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building. A lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a third alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. Second alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got one line stretch, fire on the fourth floor, second line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
Hey, welcome back to the command post. I'm Chief Rick Lassie, along with my good buddy, Chief John Sulka, and we're back with our fire engineering podcast. And this particular episode, before we get started, John, welcome, and how you doing? You doing better? I know you kind of injured your wing there a little bit, but it looks like progress is being made.
Yeah, a little torn rotator cuff. Doing better. Yeah, I got the sling on and been treated. Been one under the knife ready. Surgery's done. So we're in the recovery mode. We'll be fine. We're actually left and we're on vacation. We're down in Myrtle Beach, so I'm trying to make the best with my arm in this big silly thing. But other than that, everything's good.
Well, I know it's got to be driving you crazy because you were like one of the most active people I know. I mean, I always joke about you get up at 3 a.m. and it's like nonstop. If you're at home, you're like doing all kinds of manual labor around the house and running calls with the department and stuff. And I just know that's got to be killing you, just to, be limited with the use. So you'll be back. You'll be back to normal in no time. So. Hey, let's do this, John, before we get rolling with this one. Let's remind our listeners, FDIC, I know is a ways off. It's in April. But calls for papers are open. The deadline's coming up pretty quick, June 23rd. So if you don't have your submission in, you're going to miss. June 23rd is right around the corner. So make sure we're always, John will tell you, I'll tell you, we're always looking for new talent. We're always looking for that new exciting class that everybody starts buzzing and talking about. So if you got a great idea, submit it and see what happens. There's only so many classrooms, so the quicker you get your stuff in, I know we're going to be reviewing it. We've got an advisory board meeting coming up in July in New Jersey. So a lot of great things happening. It's going to be another great FDIC, but get your stuff in. John, I mentioned this to you the other day. You've heard me in class how many times talk about John Ashman, Chief John Ashman, Captain John Ashman, about spec and rigs and about the one fire where next door he's up on the landing and the kid with the nozzle. And you've just heard me talk about him so many times. What a great guy, what a gentleman, huge heart, just a great person, great dad. But I know I mentioned this the other day, and I didn't want to start without moving on, without mentioning John passed away. He got sick, and we lost him. They just had his funeral in Louisville for him. So a gigantic icon, if you will, especially when it comes to apparatus, hydraulics, instruction, teaching. If the guy wasn't at work, wasn't doing something with his family, he was teaching, and he'll be sorely missed. Another great one gone, and doing things in other place for us now. And you recently lost a couple friends. I'm telling you, you scared the shit out of me a while back when you sent me a picture of the memorial board. I don't remember where that was at. You can clear it up for me in a second. When it's got the 343 on the one side, and then it's got those your department's losing due to World Trade Center illnesses on the right-hand side. But the scary part is this just gigantic board that's empty, which isn't a good sign. But
and it's approaching. The numbers are approaching. The numbers for the post 9/11 are approaching the 9/11 numbers. Yeah.
It's just I when you sent me that picture, I just went. I think you even said the same thing. I said that's so freaking scary when you see all the open space like they're planning, But so you lost a buddy the other day, right? Yesterday, day before?
Like last week, Lieutenant Jimmy Burns, Boppo, they call him. old timer from 46 Engine. You know, a whole generation ahead of me, but I knew him and he lived near me, and you know, retired now, and he passed away quietly about a week ago. Great old time engine boss. You know, just a good guy. Yeah, you had to listen real carefully when he was talking. He wasn't a loud guy, you know. And again, of course, I was away when it happened. I was visiting my son. I hate when that happens, especially people that I know and love when they die and they pass away, and you miss everything because you're away with the family somewhere. And then, of course, just a couple of days ago, maybe day before yesterday, I was sitting out on the beach. We're down in Myrtle Beach now, and Neil Farrell was one of my firefighters when I was lieutenant in Squad 1 in Brooklyn. Neil was one of my guys in the company. Great guy, great firefighter. You know, I got promoted out of there, left, and as did he. He got promoted, made lieutenant, got promoted again, made captain. He was a captain of 227, good busy outfit out in Brooklyn. Retired back in 2006, and just passed away. I saw it on Facebook, and I thought I had missed something. I thought, oh wow, when did he pass away? But it turns out he had just passed away. I did a little research, and of course, by the time the next day came, which is today, now all the arrangements are online and everything else. Another great guy, probably my age, probably in his early 60s. And again, you know, you got to remember, you know, you and I, and of course our listeners, you got to remember, we're all on the same train. This is not going to last forever. Some guys go sooner than others, and it just reminds me of all the other guys in the last couple of years that died, Harry Carter and all the others that we know. And I'll bring that up later when we talk about the topic for today. But yeah, so sometimes the only silver lining to these tragic stories or these sad stories about guys is it just reminds you that, you know what, you gotta make good use of your time. You gotta stay positive and have fun and do things and make a difference and be nice to people around you and make a difference. You know, you can't just, sometimes you see people that are just cranky and whining and not happy about too much, and you say, man, oh man, the clock is ticking, you know, so enjoy life.
Well, and you always said this. You actually taught me this a long time ago. Just with a simple phrase, used to say, you never know how the day is going to end. I don't know how many times we've said that, where it's one thing when somebody's sick for a while and you're expecting it, and you're like, oh, did you hear 6 months he's been fighting it or whatever, she's been fighting it. But it's the surprise, it's the out of left field. You're like, where did that come from? And you said it so perfectly just at one time, and I'll never forget it. You're like, Rick, you never know how the day is going to end. Just like you said, you know, to run around with the boulders on your shoulders, carrying all those boulders, the weight, you know, of grudges and anger and all that stuff. You know, there's some people out there we see on television, other things, forgiving people for some pretty serious stuff. It's time to move on and live your life and enjoy it, because you only got one chance to do it. But so you know, you just mentioned a couple of guys, and I know anytime you refer to him as a good boss, a good firefighter, kind of like I just talked about John Ashman. I think the backbone behind all the successful people we've ever talked about, John, is the fact that they've got their own particular love for the job. I think everybody's is different. Yours is different than mine. Mine's different than so-and-so's and so-and-so's. But the one common theme we've always said about the great people we hang with, the great leaders, number one, that all great leaders value family. Number two is that they're always trying to learn. They're always trying to gain another perspective. They're always trying to grab something. And so that's why, you know, you and I just talked like minutes ago about let's do a show, and, you know, because we're always kind of grabbing topics out of the air. And the question comes up, I know, to you and to me from some of our friends that we meet on the road, you know, about why should I attend outside training? What's the big deal about, you know, isn't what I get in my department, my volunteer career department, enough? You know, I mean, I have a life to live. I have a family. You know, when I'm done, I have to unplug and go home, and I don't have time to go to classes and stuff. So how about we visit for just a little bit here about the importance or why? You know, I mean, some kid comes up and says that to you, John. Look, you're a family man. You got kids and grandkids, and, you know, you've got 50, 60 properties you're taking care of. You know, you've got all this stuff that you're doing. You know, there's just not, you know, there's not enough time to go to training. I mean, you're probably barely able to make the training you do with your volunteer department when you're on, you know, when you're in the Bronx too. And So what do you say to them for starters when it comes to somebody saying, so why, Chief Selka, why should I attend outside training, outside my regular department stuff?
Well, the obvious first part of that, the obvious first answer is, it's going to make you better at what you do. It's going to make you a better firefighter. It's just like all the guys that go to college and all the guys that do other stuff. It's going to improve your abilities, your skills, your abilities, your everything that you do, your performance at work, which makes you safer. And if you're a boss, it makes your crew safer and it makes your department more effective, and all those other positive things. But as far as comparing it, against I want to spend time with my family. I spend enough time at work between work hours and overtime hours. I want to go home and be with my family. I hate guys to do that because you can't do it. You can't compare it. There is no comparison. Family is always more important than overtime or going to a class or going to a seminar. Guys talk about time. I don't have enough time. Well, my answer to the question is, so make the time. You know what? Everybody probably does, with the exception of a guy that's got 9 children that's homeschooling them, and his wife is an ER nurse at night, and they live out in the woods off the grid, and they have to chop wood to stay warm. I mean, yeah, okay, that guy might not have the time. But the typical guy or gal, the typical firefighter or officer that lives in a community and has a spouse or a significant other, whether they work or don't. I did it. You did it. A lot of people we know did it. Everybody organizes and juggles their schedules, and one comes home and picks the other kids up at the school and drop them off so they can go for a night. Make the time. And the reason I say that, and we're saying it today, is because it really is worth it. The perspectives and the lessons that you learn at what we call, quote unquote, outside training, seminars and conferences that are not hosted by or in your city or in your town or by your fire department, but elsewhere. You meet so many people from different places, from different fire departments that have different ways of doing things, that have different apparatus, that have different SOPs on stretching hose, packing hose, pulling hose.
How many times have you called me? How many times have you called me, John, and said, I was just in this class. I mean, we talked about the seconds, that class, about they're not your seconds. I can't tell you how many times you called me and said, couple of different things. One is, you're not going to believe the new tools or the thing I saw at this fire department, this engine, this truck. But how many times you call me going, I just sat through a breakout session, a workshop for a guy, and he talked about stuff. I took, you said this before, I took like 20 pages of notes. There's been so many times.
And that thing that you just brought up, that seconds, right? Those are not our seconds. That's such a gigantic lesson. It was, number one, it was somebody else's program that I sat through out there in Seattle. It was a great program. And then I was so impressed with it. Like you said, I took notes, I wrote it down, and then I started talking about it. I think we talked about it previously on another podcast. Then I wrote an article on it. Then I've talked about it in class, oh my God, dozens and dozens of times. Other people have written down, when I talked about it, they wrote it down and they're talking about it. Think about that. Think about the fact that I went to a class where another guy taught a program and came up with an interesting concept that I grabbed on and started sharing. Imagine if everybody in that room did that. Think of how effective that makes that one class for that one guy, and think how valuable that lesson becomes. And you multiply it by, if I remember correctly, there was about 700 people at that conference that year out there in Seattle. Great conference. And you can multiply that by every conference, by every class, by every session, by every podcast. Even just recently, this past FDIC, you and I were in the radio booth. They had they had the interview booth that had like the radio thing.
Oh yeah.
On the exhibit, not the exhibit floor, but out in the hallway with the glass walls, and it looked like we were on TV. It looked like we were News Channel 6, and we were talking about stuff like we are now. But instead, we were in this little cubicle, and all the thousands of guys and gals walking by were stopping and looking in and listening, and all of a sudden, people were picking up stuff there as well. Not because it came from you and I, but because we're sharing it, and because they took the time to be there. And that's the lesson we're trying to. That's the lesson we're trying to make now. Yeah, I know plenty of shop guys, and I've said this too. There's guys on the FDNY, and you can add any other fire department there. There's guys in Chicago, there's guys in Louisville, there's guys in Mineola. There's guys in every fire department that don't know there's even any other fire departments in the world. They think they're the There are guys that don't know that there's magazines, firehouse, fire engineering, etc.
There's a department. There's a department by me that doesn't know the city. There's a department by me that doesn't know the city of Dallas has a fire department. They think they're the only fire department in the world. They think FDIC's bank insurance. They don't have a clue that there's a fire department outside their own little tiny fire department.
Absolutely. and some have never been exposed to it. And once you are, and you and I ask it all the time when we're at FDIC, when I go to other conferences, I do it. Who's here for the first time? Boom. Sometimes a third or a half of the class hands go up, and you're like, wow, boy, you have just stumbled into one of the greatest things for your career, whether it be a volunteer career or a paid career. You've just stumbled into a great activity and now here's another secondary benefit that I love is I mentioned Harry Carter. I would have never met Harry Carter. I would have never met you. I would have never met, think of the hundreds of guys that we each know that we would have never met had we not get involved in teaching and training. And whether you go as a teacher or a trainer or as a student, that we would never have been in contact with or got to know had we never gone to a couple of these conferences.
You and I actually met at FDIC through a mutual friend, Chief John Norman, because I met John while attending classes at the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute, which we ended up teaching together. And then we would go to FDIC to teach, and we walk around FDIC. You'd be there teaching, and he introduced me to you under the escalator. You're exactly Eddie Buchanan. Everybody, the Mike Dugans and the David Rhodes, our new boss, and all the different people that we've met. It's kind of funny. You go, I didn't meet him like at a birthday party, which is fine. I'm just saying I met him at conferences, while attending other classes. And I do have to say something before you go on. When you said about getting out there and getting ideas and stuff, and I've said this before, and you can take your name out of this, John, if it makes you feel better, because I know you're a humble dude. But I'm always amazed. I mentioned this in Mississippi the other day, which, by the way, the Mississippi Firefighters Association celebrated 100th anniversary and 86th of their conference, Mississippi Fire Chiefs and Firefighters. Oh my God, what an incredible conference, John. I told you, what a great group of people, family. I didn't want to go home. They were just awesome people. Thanks to my family in Mississippi. But so
hey, what story you're going to tell? And you know whose name you can add? Because we've heard him talked about too. Our friend from Miami, Dave.
Well, Bill Gustin. So that's what I was going to say. So exactly. So I told them the other day, John, I go, why is it such a surprise? And I guess that's kind of a rhetorical question I'm going to throw. Why is it such a surprise when people see Chief John Sulka and Captain Bill Gustin sitting in the front row? And the example there's been three, but the one I'm going to pull you, it was at the TEACS Leadership Conference, and I think Frisco, Texas. And it was a picture somebody posted saying, a lot of this particular one, I just got done teaching. I got there late, so I'm in like the fourth row. You and Bill are sitting in the front freaking row of a massive auditorium classroom, if you will. Both of you with notepads, both of you taking notes, and this young guy's going, "This is like the coolest thing in the world. I just sat through Chief Sulka, and then next class was Captain Bill Gustin's classes, and I'm sitting through somebody else's class, and the two guys I just watched teach me are taking notes from the guy who's teaching now." And I'm kind of like, yeah. Now this is just me because I know you guys, and that's how I think a lot of us operate in our circle of friends. Are like, and that's a big deal. But then I realized, John, a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't. They work around a couple people, not a lot, that might not be as into the job, might not be interested, and they don't see that like we do. But I'm like, yeah, this is the one guy said is a good friend. The other one's my best friend, and he calls you all the time, telling me, I just learned this, I just got this. And I said this, I said, both Bill Gustin and John Sulka have over 50 freaking years in the fight. It's 100 years plus of experience doing it too. And they still think it's appropriate enough to sit in the front row of a classroom, not in the back, in the front row and take notes. And again, take your name out of it, because I know, you don't like me telling wonderful stories about you, but I think that's an absolutely wonderful scenario to paint for a young firefighter. Like, and my thing is, so what's your excuse? If these two guys...
And it's the same for everybody, because anybody could wander into any class, sit down, and all of a sudden be exposed to something that they never heard of before. And obviously, that's why the folks like you that are on the advisory board for FDIC, that's why you pick the classes you pick. Wow, that looks interesting. That looks like something new. This guy's got some good credibility. Not like just any buffoon sends in something for a class and they pick his hat, name out of a hat. It's really analyzed and looked at. So the fact that the class exists means it's probably been looked at and weighed by some other professional people already, and it's been valued enough that they're gonna present it. So anybody, a guy with 2 years or 22 years or 42 years, could walk into a class. And we've said this before, just like books, even our own book. We wrote in our own book, 5 Alarm Leadership. This whole thing doesn't apply to you. There's some pages in they're just not the way you do things. Just flip the page and go to something else. Well, the same thing with these classes. If you're in a class for 90 minutes, you might 10 minutes of it might be the most important stuff you ever saw. The rest of it might be stuff you already know, you're already doing. Yeah, okay, good. Wait a minute, what is he saying now? And all of a sudden you pick up one new point out of a class. It's a success, and it's a valuable activity then.
Well, and you mentioned something about, those that go through like certification classes and college classes. You and I are huge supporters of higher education. All your children have their degrees and trade schools. I want to mention the college stuff first. We're in love, you and I, with CSU and Waldorf, Columbia Southern University. We have a great partnership with them. By the way, for our listeners, not only is CSU, they've always been DETC, Distance Education Training Council certified, but a while back, they received their accreditation from the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, the Commission on Colleges. They're an accredited institution by, I think it's the 3 big accreditations. So, and I think COVID helped us realize that as much as and as fun and as great as it is going to a brick and mortar school, there is incredible value, and I can attest to this, of doing online training, online studies. If you're willing to devote yourself, in fact, it's actually more difficult, I think, for an online program, because now CSU has incredible, John, professors that interact with you, but you're not sitting in the classroom. You raise your hand, you have a question, that kind of stuff. So you've got to put in the work. You've got to do the research. You've got to email your professors or message them on the Blackboard, or you've got to be into it to do it. So I just want to say, for those that pursue that's outstanding. And I definitely want to mention CSU's major feat this last year, gaining that accreditation. I'm very proud of that, because those of us on the advisory board there are intimately involved. Great
organization. They support us, some of our programs, very positive, and the students really love the way they're treated. They really put themselves out for the students,
Oh, they're a class act. Columbia Southern University, CSU, is a class. If I wasn't an alumni, I'd say that they're a class act. But the flip side to that too is, and you've got a son that's doing incredibly well. I mean, very, very successful young man. The trade schools, our friend Mike Rowe, that does The Dirtiest Jobs, and Mike Rowe Works, and The Voice for the Deadliest Catch, very, very, very much educated person. But he also says, and I believe that not everybody, on the one hand, needs or should go to college. I use the example, our next door neighbors, John, back in Louisville, Krista, there's an incredible family, great mom and dad, the kind of parents you want, the kind of parents that raise their children right. But Krista went through nursing school. I think she married a Dallas police officer. She's done fine. She has her degree. Tucker decided, I'm not going to go to college. He went to the welding school, went to a welding camp for I forget how long it is. It's a long time. And you look at these guys, and he's driving like an F-25,000 pickup truck, big house with a pool, there was a time growing up for you and I where they said, if you can't do it, why don't you go be a plumber? Why don't you go be an electrician? Well, there's a lot of plumbers, electricians, landscapers, motorcycle mechanics, welders that are making a bucket load of money and doing fine, supporting their families. So there's a lot of different avenues, just like there's a lot of different classes and conferences. FDIC, we know that. Firehouse Expo, we know that.
I love mentioning Jimmy McCormick, because it is unique. It's quite different from really anything else that's out there. A lot of people do hands-on training. A lot of people do live fire training, but he's got quite a unique setup out there. And it's a gigantic thing. It's almost like Firetown, firehouses and buildings and hydrants. And I mean, he's got everything in the world out there. You go out there for a week-long class, you might go to 20 or 30 working fires that are set and all planned out. The strategies are all figured in there. They got professional fire officers there supervising. They got their own MSU, mass service unit, and batteries for the radios. They got their own rigs, their garages, and everything. It's just a really tremendous place to go to. And if you wanted to, like some guys say, you know what, I work in West Mudflatville, and we just really do only 2 fires a year. We're great guys. We train a lot, but we only do 2 fires a year. And outside our district, we do nothing. There's not even any mutual aid. You know what? You can solve that problem by going to Jimmy McCormick's place, because you can literally go and work at. Some guys go to the first 20 working fires they ever went to when they get there. You know what I'm saying? So it's just valuable experience. And it's I've been there. I've taught there. My son's been there. It's just a tremendous place to go to. And that's what we're talking about. That, and I know you and I say it all the time, when you look at your phone, when you look at your calendar, when you look at, when you there's so many schools and training programs going on, and training companies and firefighters that are doing training, forcible entry training and this kind of training and that kind of training. It's just, you'd be shocked if you typed into your computer or your phone just to see what's going on every single day, every single weekend.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why you said it perfectly. There really is an excuse for saying, I don't know where to train. I can't go anywhere. Now, a lot of it takes money. Takes money to go to Jimmy McCormick's place, takes money to go to FDIC Firehouse. I always, and I'm very selfish this way. And, we're on fireengineering.com right now. I love, and it's just me, sitting on top of the world, loving and honored to be part of an incredible conference like FDIC, which is, there's nothing else like it in the world. But, there's things right next door to your fire department that, how many classes our neighbors or the neighboring county Chiefs Association, or your state Chiefs Association or Instructors Association, they're hosting classes, right next door to you that may only be maybe $100, $150, $25. Some are free, they're grants. But my question is, John, so some guys go, yeah, I went to see Joe Blow and Cindy Blow over in Beeperville. And I spent the whole Saturday, I'm telling you, the class sucked or whatever. And I'm like, I've always said this, are there classes out there that completely suck? I guess. But I think my challenge has always been, John, is I tend to go in there with, okay, no matter what, I'm going to try and find something to take out of this class. You said it before, like our book may not only parts of our book may apply to you. We always talk about we rip out about a third of the pages and take the rest and make it work for you. The reason we adjusted firehouse scenarios to a discussion, and that we want you to use your department staffing, your department's responses to make it realistic to you and your team, how you fight fires. Same thing. There's always something I think you can grab from a class. And you know what, John, sometimes I'll be honest with you, I've sat through some classes going, oh God, this is not what this guy wrote. This is totally not it. And during the breaks, I gained more from talking to my classmates about stuff than I actually did in the class, but right. So just the fact I'm going to outside training, I'm gaining something. Maybe how we're going to go back. How many times have you gone back to South Blooming Grove and go, hey guys, I was just in Colorado, and the same, volunteer department, same size as ours, and they did this, and your guys like, really, and a whole nother idea, right?
Now, another thing is, you mentioned already, like paying for classes, and a lot of the private ones and conferences you got to pay for. Some are more reasonably priced than others. Some are a little bit more expensive than others. Sometimes that has something to do with who the presenters are. Sometimes they're a little bit more nationally known, or a little bit more senior people that have been for a while, and maybe the cost is a little bit greater for the host. But I mean, I live in New York State. OFPC, Office of Fire Prevention and Control. I mean, it's a gigantic organization that conducts training all around the state for free. You don't pay for classes in New York State. If you're a volunteer firefighter, you're a career firefighter, you want to go to the New York State class on, whatever, ladder company operations, or, hazmat, or, firefighter survival, those classes are presented at county training centers all over the state by state certified instructors who are paid people, who are, a lot of them are career guys and volunteer guys from departments throughout the state. The point is, it's not very affordable. It's free. And then you talk about Sue, right? We talk about Sue.
I love Sue.
And the New York State Association of Fire Chiefs. And that organization only exists. It only exists to train firefighters. It's not an administrative association. It's not for brotherhood of fire chiefs throughout the state. It's to train, New York State's chiefs and firefighters. And I'll tell you, they run live fire and a company officer training and a whole conference. Their conference is coming up the end of next week. A whole big 3-4 day conference up in Syracuse is coming up next week. And you got to see the lineup. Butch Cobb is there and a bunch of guys I know. So,
well, and how about you? You're right there right now. How about you right now? South Carolina.
But my vacation constantly conflicts with and then right here where I am in South Carolina.
Yeah.
The end of this week, the program is coming up. I think it's 15th, 16th, 17th is the South Carolina Firefighter Association right here in Myrtle Beach. Came back to the beach. They had it for a couple of years out in Columbia, and then they moved back here to Myrtle Beach. So they're here again. And I'm always on vacation when it happens. So I'm always here and I always attend and, see my old buddies over there, Bruce and the rest of them. But that's what I'm saying. And here's an example of an association that has it in a place that's a tourist town. So a guy can, so you drag mama and the 2 kids along with you. And, you go to a couple of classes and then you go to the beach, you go out to dinner and you go to one of these shows and all of a sudden you make a vacation out of it. So there's a lot of ways to look at this.
Well, and there's times when you need the budget. And you and I have talked about it several times. We don't know how Columbia Southern pulls it off where, we do the Company Officer Academy and the Chief Officer, the Battalion Chief School, if you will, both with CSU and without. We started that and CSU wanted to jump on board and became a great partner with it. But we're both amazed. So you'll look in, I'll look and go, so the early bird rate for a 3-day class with Salka and Lasky, which forget it's our names, they say with 2 instructors, is like $175. It's like, I forget what exact. It's nothing for 3 days, and that's your morning breakfast breaks, snacks, coffee, juice stuff. Sometimes there's sponsors for lunches. There's usually a dinner. So even some of those classes, and I've said this before, if you can budget, to put like LED lights underneath the frame of your pickup truck, or you can budget for, things like that. Once in a while, you can budget to attend a class like that. A place to go that may have to make a little charge, unlike the free ones. And there's plenty of freeos,
And you know what? And that's a perfect example of what you just made. I do a lot of other things. I'm a hunter and I love working around my house and stuff like that. You know what? And I don't hesitate. If I need something, if I needed a new bow, a new arrow, a new rifle, a new box of shells, I go and do it because I make the time, I make the money, I put it aside, and it's important to me. Well, you just have to elevate your outside training interest to a point where when save up a little money, save up wherever it is you get, an overtime check or working a little extra on the side, and put it aside and say, you know what, I put this money aside, I'm going to go to that conference, in the county next door, Well,
and you said before there's so many opportunities, and you and I have mentioned this in class before several times as well. There used to be a time, and we both went through this, and a bunch of other people, it wasn't that long ago, if you think about it, was for like a brand new generation. But you had to get, in the old days, you had to pick up Fire Engineering or Firehouse Magazine. You had to pick up the keys to your car and sign up and drive 2 hours, an hour, 8 hours, 4 hours to see John Salka, John Norman, Alan Brunacini, people like that teach. You had to do. Now, you have to work extremely hard to not be interested. With the apps on your phone, with the webinars, podcasts like this, we do this with Fire Engineering, we do our old school, our Hump Day Hangouts that you and I do with Terry and Scott and David now on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. The conference that you'd have to do this, like, we'll pay you $10,000 to go live in a cabin in the woods with no telephone, no internet for a month. You almost have to do that kind of unplugging, because there's so much out there now. There's so much training, so many opportunities out there now, and one of the things, John, that I go back to, not just the entrance and the importance of getting the training, but you and I'll speak just selfishly about the two of us. We're way too competitive. You and I have never settled for being second best. You and I have never settled for being just okay. We talk about in classes on how both of us as chief officers, as commanders, have reached past people to grab crews that we like, that we know are going to get the job done because they train all the time, they do stuff, they go to outside training, and we say that. I think really the underlying reason is that's what we did. And we realized the importance of getting out there and going to classes and going to conferences. Like I say, we have the luxury. You always say we have the honor to hang with the coolest people in the world, firefighters. I think the luxury we have is just what I talked about you and Bill. We get to go to classes, sometimes conferences that aren't just us, and go, hey, did you see who's teaching this afternoon? Yeah, hurry up, let's go grab lunch. I want to go sit through so-and-so's class. And I go back to that, and let me tell this real quick story, John. You remember this story about Alan Brunacini, our mentor and friend who passed away at 82.
Is this actually?
Yeah, exactly. 48 years in Phoenix, 26 as chief. So for our listeners, John knows the story. It's Chief Alan Brunacini, Chief Bobby Halton, and myself. So Chief Halton is driving us. We're going to do an FDIC advisory board meeting, but we're going to go teach in Rogers, Arkansas, which was like from Tulsa was, I don't know how long, 5 hour, whatever drive. It was a pretty long drive to get there. Anyway, the whole freaking way there, you remember this story. I'm sitting in the front passenger seat. Bobby's driving. Bruno's in the back. Every 20 minutes, he's tapping him on the shoulder, hand me his phone, read this article, look at this video, look at this picture. What do you think? And I finally looked at Bobby. I go, this guy's got like 70 years in the fire service. Does he ever stop reading articles and learning? And Bobby goes, well, that's Bruno. And I went, that's how that's how you should aim to be continuously interested in your profession, especially in ours. What do we say in class, John, in the Battalion Chiefs Academy? As a company officer, why would you not want to train your people for a job that could kill them? This is not about how I can make a better sandwich or a better pizza. This is how I can do my job better, save people's lives, and seriously, even more seriously, our own, right?
Hey, if I was sitting behind you on that trip, how many times would I have tapped you on the shoulder?
None.
None. I've been asleep.
In the car, yeah. But seriously, I mean, we're always nudging. We're always buying books, not just, and I'll just say, not even fire books. How many times in the airport do you buy a book written by someone that had, great concept or whatever, and so on and so forth? But I mean, again, outside training, it's one thing to say, yeah, my department does plenty for me, my career volunteer department. I don't believe that's ever enough. And I know as I required for my training chiefs, what I required of myself as a training chief, John, that was we provided the monthly training calendar, but it was up to the officers to provide their people with additional training. It was up to the officers to come up with ideas. It was up to the officers to come up with, in the training calendar, we give SOPs, SOGs to review with their crews, company quick drills, and the regular monthly topics. But it was in fact, so much so, this, we talk about this during the company officer class, that the company officers, and part of one of the core competencies they get evaluated on a performance evaluation is crew professional development. What are they doing beyond the regular training topics to train their people? And you actually have pictures from 88 Engine, other places, when we do the one class of guys on the second floor of the firehouse, a 115-year-old firehouse, doing dawning, doffing, reduced profile drills with their SCBAs. And John, and I've said this before, 88 Engine, 38 truck are just a wee bit busy in the Bronx, okay? And I'm being sarcastic by saying it because they're very busy. Why is it always the busiest fire companies, the busiest fire departments that Stockton, California, Wichita, Kansas, Louisville, Texas, why is it the busiest ones that train the most and the slowest ones that train the least?
Yep, it is. It is unfortunate because it should be across the board the same. Everybody should be training, as much as possible. And it's just not true. And that's why we're talking about it today, to promote that idea.
Well, and it also goes on with using the talents of the people in your department. I think sometimes you'd be absolutely surprised at what your own membership knows, that guys you've never talked to, that, you've got people that have all kinds of talents you can use. How about your mutual aid and automatic aid partners? We recently, we recently did Iowa Park. We run automatic aid. They're a great fire department right next to Wichita West, where I'm a volunteer. And our two chiefs set up a little mutual aid drill. We went over to Iowa Park. They had a house that was going to be wrecked, and we couldn't burn it, but we tore it up. And we did first line, second line, primary search, force entry, roof ops, overhaul. We talked about organizing the fire, and we did the whole thing with just an empty old house that was getting torn down. that was going on. That was on a Saturday and Sunday. That was 2 days we picked out of the blue that had nothing to do with our training calendar. So there's tons of stuff out there that you can get to if you want. You just got to find it. So the importance again, of attending outside training. I know everything's a budget, and we understand, folks. John, how many times we told people we remember living paycheck to paycheck when we were first starting out in life with our jobs, and we know that things can become expensive and that. But you said it perfect. There's a lot of free stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's 8-hour class. You go for $50, and it includes your lunch and your coffee and your breaks and stuff. If you're willing to look for it, I'll just say that it's there.
Yep.
FDIC is absolutely incredible. John, I've been teaching her forever. But there's FDIC. There's so many classes, so many state organizations. In Texas, we've got some great organizations here from the state associations that provide quality training, and a lot of times for next to nothing. Or if it's, the academies and stuff, obviously they got to pay instructors and stuff with a lot of stuff. But any other thoughts before we wrap things up on why I should attend outside training?
We touched most of it, but like I said, the one point I want to reemphasize was just like college. You used to have to go to college to get your education, and now you can do it online. And the same can be said. Obviously, it's not hands-on, but you can get a lot of good fire service training online, sitting in your home, sitting in the firehouse. Hopefully there's computer accessibility in the fire stations where everybody's working, or in the volunteer firehouses. You can get a lot of training. You can watch a lot of videos. You can look at a lot of good instruction. You can even attend some of these conferences via computer, right, online. So there's a lot of stuff to be said for not even having to travel anywhere.
Well, and COVID did that for us. You and I've talked about that. Like working with a lot of people, telecommuting, working from you can't work from home. You have to be here. All of a sudden, well, I guess that does work. And I've said this before. If I study a particular couple of different books for a class, or a book for a class, or the curriculum, and I take a test in the classroom and achieve an A, I get a perfect score. I get 100. Or I take that online at home and I get 100. Someone needs to tell me what the difference is. There isn't. If I get 100 in the classroom listening to John or Rick teach, and I get 100 studying the curriculum, you know what I'm saying? Now there's a little bit more information you're going to get from someone who's monologuing besides the curriculum. I understand that, but like you said, there's ways, there's means, there's opportunities for you to get this stuff. I'll go back to the competitiveness, John. Who wants to be the firefighter that you hear me say all the time that wears the company logo shirt that says "We suck less"? I want to be the best. I want to be the one that Chief John Salka, goes, Rick, come here. No, you guys, wait a second. You come here. I want to be the go-to guy for people like you. You know what I'm saying? I want to be the one that you pick first. When it comes to, you talk about these people all the time, and the people that you talk about all the time, that you brag about, the Timmy Kletz and the hundreds of other guys that you brag about, the common theme there again is they're hungry. They're never satisfied with their own abilities and their own competencies, and they're always hungry for training and classes. And a lot of times it's beyond. And how many of them come back, John, from classes to their own department like they should go, oh, let me teach you. Let me show you what I just learned in that class with Bill Gustin, or with John Salk, or whatever, that kind of stuff. So there's some great opportunities out there. So, well, hey, buddy, I know you've got 155 properties to take care of and 17 grandchildren, and all that. And you got to go back to, I was so lucky, folks, to steal John. He believe it or not, he actually does take a vacation once in a while. There's a couple he takes every year. So to be able to get him, to steal him off the beach while he's out, because he's like a freaking workaholic. But John, if they want to get a hold of you, best email? chiefjohnsalka@gmail.com. And folks, if you want a copy of his latest book or any of his books, get a hold of him. The only problem is I think they're reprinting again your newest book, because they keep selling out of it. Somebody just posted it the other day and talked about like 20 years of articles and experiences and stuff, and this, blah, blah, blah. it's a great book. So if you want any of John's stuff, get a hold of him. I'm at chieflasky@gmail.com. We never end any of our shows without asking a couple things, and it's, I guess it's a brilliant statement when it comes to how we feel about those that are important in our lives. And please never forget that the men and women out there serving our armed forces are very special people, and keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Less than 1% of our nation's population actually serve in the armed forces. John's got two sons, one that served in the Marines, one that currently is a major in the Marines. My son served in the Navy as an FMF corpsman. So very, very close, dear to our heart, but please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And probably the most important phrase of all, and you can apply this to law enforcement, to our men and women served in the armed forces, and our firefighters. Never forgetting means just that. Never forgetting. We'll see you next time on the Command Post. God bless you, and thanks for listening.